Hey, what's up? Today we're making another tier list. People really enjoyed the mythic item tier list, so now we're doing the same for runes. I'm gonna rate the runes by 3 factors. First, the meta aspect, how viable it is, with which runes it has to compete, and how strong they are. Second, the fun angle, how fun it is to proc the rune and combine it with items, synergies, stuff like that. And third, personal preference, because like I said, I'm not a robot, you know. Some I just prefer over others because the rune is more enjoyable to me. To preface this before we get into it, I think out of all the runes, Udyr can probably take any rune he like and have somewhat good outcomes with it. That being said, he certainly has runes that he favors more than others, but if you're an Udyr enjoyer, you can probably make any rune work to a certain extent. So let's get into it. So first off, we got Press the Attack. Press the Attack actually used to be one of Udyr's main runes before his rework, and I think it still sees a decent play rate nowadays. I think that the time really when Press the Attack lost its grip on the Deer was during the Sunfire meta, when everyone was playing on-hit Udyr and abusing the new rune Lethal Tempo. And after that, it went from Lethal Tempo to Conqueror, because Udyr didn't have on-hit anymore, and yeah, I don't know, ever since then, Press the Attack, you know, it's a viable option, but never the meta option. I'd say though, it's great. Me personally, I like Press the Attack because it has short-term and long-term value. It's really flexible. Let's say you engage the enemy, right? You stun him with your bear stance. You follow up with 2 taps of your Coup, and you proc Press the Attack. You instantly get some burst damage, and now the enemy is exposed, right? And he gets more damage, 8 to 12% more damage through the Press the Attack rune. You now have the option to either say, okay, we got a little burst of this guy by proccing Press the Attack, we could disengage now, or we can keep the trade going, you know, you still get value out of the rune even after proccing it, so burst and long-term value. I think this is great for top lane Udyr, because it can be used against top laners that are good with short or long trades, right? But I especially enjoy this rune on jungle Udyr, because the Press the Attack debuff you land on enemies does not only expose them to more damage by you, but also by your allies. So if I gank somebody and I proc Press the Attack and my allies follow up, they get increased damage on the enemy. That's great for team play, you know? It's such a rune made for ganking. So yeah, if you play a Q-Max Udyr, you got the attack speed to really proc the Press the Attack fast. I'd say it's a great rune. Now, of course, it's in direct competition to Lethal Tempo, Fleet, Footwork, and Conqueror. If you pick Press the Attack, that doesn't allow you to pick any of the other runes. That being said, it being so reliable, yeah. Honestly, I'll give it S tier. I'll give it S tier. Me personally, I really enjoy Press the Attack. Yeah. I think if Conqueror ever receives a bigger nerf, Press the Attack might actually make a comeback. I think Conqueror is only really strong right now because it combines really well with Jack Show and conditioning, and just like scaling up power during the team fight. But as soon as there's another on-hit item on the rise that Udyr can abuse, he's going back to Lethal Tempo, right? And as soon as Conqueror is getting a big nerf, Press the Attack could make a comeback. I think this rune could be on the horizon. It's just waiting for its turn. So next up we got Lethal Tempo. As we already mentioned, Lethal Tempo used to be the main rune on Udyr during the Sunfire meta, when Sunfire was still a mythic item and could apply on-hit effects. Lethal Tempo was also a pretty interesting rune on old Udyr, Because Udyr having attack speed, he could proc his on-hit effects that he gets every third attack, being in the same stance over and over and over again. Interesting, but that is talking about old Udyr, right? Now we have to look at new Udyr, and new Udyr has an on-hit effect for only 2 auto attacks every time he enters a stance, except for his Q, where he gets an on-hit effect for 6 seconds and also getting an attack speed buff. So if you play a Q-max Udyr, you can make lethal tempo work. And of course, if you build on-hit items like Blade of the Rune King or Rage Blade or anything like that, and you apply your on-hit effects through the items, you don't have to worry about not having too much on-hit damage through your abilities. Compared to Conqueror though, I don't know, maybe it's because I personally enjoy Phoenix Udyr and like a scaling big raid boss Udyr more than like a super hyper aggressive spammy auto attack kind of Udyr. But yeah, unless Udyr gets to proc more on-hit effects on his abilities outside of his Q, I'm gonna go ahead to give lethal tempo an A tier here. Yeah, with the high praises I'm singing here of Press the Attack and Conqueror, I cannot comfortably give lethal tempo higher than A tier. It's still a fun rune, still a good rune. Like I said, it has synergy with his Q. But yeah, the glory days of it are certainly over. Old Udyr fucked a lot harder with lethal tempo than new Udyr. It just is what it is. Maybe if we ever get a new on-hit item that works well on Udyr, we can make a little bit of a comeback. Alright, next up we got Fleet Footwork. Fleet Footwork is definitely an interesting rune. Most runes just give you straight up stats and damage, right? Press the attack, gives you a burst of damage. And more damage after that. Lethal tempo, attack speed, Conqueror, stats, right? Everything is just about hurting, you know? But Fleet Footwork takes a different approach here. You hit the enemy, you don't get bonus damage, but you get movement speed and a burst of heal. I think this is a pretty interesting rune on Udyr if you're playing him top lane. Because then you can do like an in and out gameplay kind of style, you know? You run onto the enemy, you stun them with your ram stance, you trigger Fleet Footwork, you now get a heal and a movement speed bonus, and now you get to decide, what do I do with this movement speed bonus? Do I run ahead of the enemy and keep the trade going? Or do I disengage, wait for him to use his abilities and then jump back in, right? You have this movement speed to work with, and it's definitely a skill angle here. It's definitely a skill angle, I think. It's easy to just stat check the enemy with a bunch of damaging runes and scaling runes, but it's tough to actually make Fleet Footwork work. Now, some might argue that's not a good argument for the rune. That might actually be trashing the rune. It's like, if it's tough to make work, why should I pick it? Just because it's interesting, you know, it's fun. I think you can definitely make some plays happen with this rune. Also, combining this rune with your turtle stance, and let's say maybe Doran's Blade Rush, plus going Overheal, you can actually, if you have lane dominance, get like a healing shield ready, so you have easier time trading, you know, with the enemy. So there's some synergies with this item to be had as well. And also, since Fleet Footwork is like an energized item, so it stacks up with you moving, and Udyr having a lot of movement speed, he has an easy time proccing the item proccing the rune multiple times in a single fight, you know? Yeah. Can I give it A tier though? I don't think I can. I'm singing high praises here for the item, because it's interesting, but honestly, I didn't play it enough myself to actually speak out for it too much. maybe I actually have to play more Fleet Footwork. But for now, let's give it a B tier. Alright, next up we got Conqueror. Now Conqueror, as we already mentioned, is the main rune on Udyr right now. Udyr likes to go Conqueror combined with Jaksho. The simple reason behind this is Jaksho stacks up resistances during the fight, and Conqueror stacks up ability power during the fight. And after it's fully stacked, you heal for the damage you deal, and after Jaksho is fully stacked, it heals you off all the enemies that are nearby. So it's like this drain tanky Udyr that just gets insane amounts of stats the longer the fight goes on, right? So definitely fun and strong, but that's not actually the only way you can play Conqueror. I've been playing a lot of Conqueror Udyr on the top lane as well, combined with Ravenous Hydra and Triumph and Trinity Force. So you have like a real drain tanky but more aggressive Udyr. That can also work with lethal tempo, so you get your Trinity Force stacked up faster and you can trigger your Ravenous Hydra more often. But if you really like the drain tanky aspect of it and you want like your punches to hit harder instead of more often, Conqueror is interesting in that regard. So it works for Q and R max at the same time, because it is adaptive, right? It is adaptive force. You get either AD or AP from Conqueror, based on the fact what items you've built. So yeah, I think it's a fun rune. I've actually reached Diamond with Conqueror last season, where I played Riftmaker with Conqueror, because Riftmaker is really similar to Conqueror. If Riftmaker is fully stacked up, you get bonus damage and you get healed off the bonus damage. If Conqueror is fully stacked up, you get bonus damage, and lo and behold, the bonus damage heals you. So that was a really interesting angle. I think, yeah, Conqueror has a lot of potential. I just listed 3 different builds with it. Although it's just a stat stick rune, it definitely like goes into different directions. It like branches out into different builds. Now, I think there's a good reason why Conqueror is the main rune on Udyr right now. I think we have to give it that respect and put it in the S tier. Yeah. It's definitely better than Press the Attack. I only put Press the Attack also in S tier because it's more fun. It's more fun. Like the fun angle kinda outscales the meta here. Yeah. Anyway, next up we got Overheal. Overheal is definitely a funky rune not everyone gets to use. If you don't have healing in your kit, you pretty much can't use Overheal. That being said, Udyr does have his turtle stance, and you can also go Doran's Blade or Doran's Ring to have some bonus sustain in the lane phase. Combining this with Fleet Footwork, you can actually establish a shield during farming, and when you now take a trade with the enemy, you have a little bit of an easier time trading with him because you start with a shield. Funky rune, definitely interesting. But it's in direct competition with Triumph and Presence of Mind. Now, when we talk about Overheal on Udyr, we're talking about top lane Udyr. You can't play Overheal in the jungle. The jungle monsters deal too much consistent damage for you to actually be able to get full health and establish this shield. So we're playing it on top lane Udyr. If you're playing top lane Udyr, I like to go Presence of Mind a lot because it triggers really often. Every time you deal damage to the enemy, Presence of Mind gets activated and gives you mana. If you play a Phoenix Udyr top and the enemy is constantly in your Phoenix Storm, the rune gets reset over and over and over again, and you gain a lot of mana out of that. Right? And Udyr top lane is a really mana-hungry champion. You need some sort of mana sustain on the top lane. So Presence of Mind is a big competitor to Overheal. Triumph is also pretty nice on top lane if you play a split push Udyr. The thing with Triumph is it doesn't actually help you in a direct 1v1. Almost never. Like, Triumph gives you a heal and some gold when you kill the enemy. When you've already killed the enemy, there's not a lot that could still kill you. The only way Triumph can help you in a 1v1 situation is, let's say the enemy has Ignite. And the Triumph heal helps you to survive the Ignite if you manage to kill the enemy fast enough. Or you dove the enemy under the turret, right? And Triumph healing helps you to survive that last turret shot before you get out. But most important of all, I think Triumph is good on top lane Udyr to stack that bonus gold, to establish a lead, and because they're gonna send more than just one person to stop you from your split push. So you have to like fight 1v2 situations. And if you kill one enemy and get a heal off of that one kill, it's gonna be easier to run away or actually fight the second enemy. Right? And so there's a lot of competition against Overheal. Like I said, Overheal is a funky rune. I think it's fun. But the competition is too harsh. I think, yeah, I mean, let's be honest. It's fun, but can you yourself say, I have played Overheal Udyr? Have you really thought about picking Overheal, or have you just autopiloted into Triumph or Presence of Mind every time? No, come on, let's be honest here. I don't want to put a D tier because, like I said, it's fun. But the lack of play it's seeing and the direct competition it has to be C tier. Because if you pick Overheal, that locks you out of picking Triumph and Presence of Mind, and that's always something to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a controversial decision here, because I think there's a lot of people perma-picking Triumph. But, like I said, there's only niche situations where it helps you in a 1v1 situation. And in a top lane, I'm always thinking about the 1v1 situation. So I'm going to put Presence of Mind over Triumph here. Presence of Mind is a really solid and easy proccable mana sustain rune on the Deer. I'm going to put that A tier. And Triumph is going to be a B tier for me. That's the order for me here. Alright, next up we got Alacrity, Tenacity, and Bloodline. Again, we have to look at the direct competition here. If we pick the attack speed from Alacrity, we're gonna hit a lot harder and a lot more often, but that leaves us without the Tenacity, right? We're gonna be able to, we're not gonna be able to walk through the CC of the enemy team that easy anymore, and you know, it's a bit of a risk. Let's say we take Tenacity and the enemy can't lock us down as easy anymore. We get to run onto the enemy, stun him, and get our hits on him. We might not get as many hits on him, but we get our hits on him, right? If we go Alacrity, there's this danger that we get locked down and we don't get a single hit on the enemy, right? So it's high risk, high reward, I'd say. You have to do this case by case. I don't think Alacrity is better than Tenacity. I don't think Tenacity is better than Alacrity. I think this is a case by case where you have to look at the enemy team, see, okay, how much CC do they have? Will I go Mercury Treads to get Tenacity this game? Or maybe the Unflinching rune to get Tenacity and slow resistance, and I don't need the Tenacity and can therefore greed for the Alacrity rune, right? It's a case by case, it's a really close call. That being said, Tenacity has seen a nerf a bunch of patches ago. It's quite a while ago, but Tenacity used to be 30 Tenacity instead of 20. That's big. Now you might have realized that during this entire discussion, it was more Alacrity versus Tenacity instead of Alacrity, Tenacity, and Bloodline. And that's because I think Bloodline is dog water. The only time I ever pick Bloodline is if I'm feeling in a trolly mood, you know, and I play a full lifesteal Udyr. Right attempted to buff Bloodline by giving you 75 health when the item is fully stacked, when the rune is fully stacked. Riot, 75 health? Really? 75 health? That's nothing. I wipe my ass with 75 health, bro. So dump down, this item is really just 5.25, I think, lifesteal, which isn't bad, but comparing it to Tenacity and Alacrity on Udyr, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to go Bloodline. If you have a champion that has so many dashes that he doesn't need the Tenacity, and he already has enough attack speed that he doesn't need Alacrity, and he just can go Bloodline, that's great for you, you know? But it's not for Udyr. So we're gonna put Bloodline in D tier. Tenacity is definitely a solid rune. It helps Udyr gap close. That being said, its glory days are over, and compared to Unflinching, it's actually pretty weak. It needs to stack up, and it only gives Tenacity, but no slow resistance. So I can't put it S tier, but I'm gonna put it A tier. And Alacrity is also gonna be an A tier. Similar to Lethal Tempo, attack speed is decent on Udyr. With the right build, it can really slap. And you know, you can push your advantage and really snowball onto the enemy, just spam your auto attacks. But it's a case by case. You can't always go Alacrity, you have to look at the enemy, see how much CC they have, and then decide, do I go for it or not? Right. Alright, next up we got Coup de Gras, Cut Down, and Last Stand. Hopefully I didn't butcher that French word too much. I hope it helps that I really like that rune. Coup de Gras, in my think, is the most solid and consistent option. Because it gives you an 8% damage boost, I think, when the enemy is below 40% health. So it's just generally gonna be easier to finish off the enemy if they're low on health. If you see the enemy out of position, low on health, it's easier to wrap up that kill and get out before the enemy can help them or catch you, right? Combined with Triumph, I really like Coup de Gras. You get your kill and you get your reward. That being said, Last Stand gives you a greater damage boost than Coup de Gras, but instead of the enemy being low on health, it has to be you who is low on health. Generally speaking, Last Stand is used by champions who have a lot of sustain and can like drain, tank, or survive low on health. So for instance, Olaf gets more attack speed and more lifesteal when he's low on health. That combined with Last Stand just makes sense, especially considering that he has a W that gives him a shield, a big shield when he's low on health, right? So he's just gonna pop that shield when he's low on health, so he gets more value, more time out of Last Stand instead of using that shield when he has a lot of health. And the same goes for Udyr. Udyr has his turtle stance, Udyr has a lot of mobility, like in and out jukes. He can survive on low health for a lot longer than the enemy team would like him to. Especially if you use Awakened Turtle to get another shield and more healing on top of the base turtle, you can make a lot of use out of Last Stand. That being said though, it's a skill angle. Coup de Gras is always going to be there for you. It's safe damage you can always put onto the enemy when they're low on health. It's great for finishing off kills. I like Coup de Gras, especially in the early game, so I can wrap up my ganks and get my successful ganks in. Last Stand is tough in the early game because you don't have that much sustain as in the mid to late game. But if you manage to play around Last Stand correctly, you get more value out of it. That being said, I have to be honest, I pick Coup de Gras more often. So for me, Coup de Gras is an S tier. I love that rune. I always combine it with Triumph. Nutty, just nutty. If I have a tanky-ish Udyr, for instance, like the main Udyr build right now with Jak'Sho and Conqueror, and you're really tanky and you easily manage to survive low on health, it's a great rune. So last stand closely following here at A tier. And lastly, we got Cut Down, which again I didn't talk about at all, just like Bloodline, because it's not a rune really made for Udyr. Cut Down gives you bonus damage on enemies that have more health than you. There's really rarely gonna be a time where the enemy has more health than you on Udyr. Just Udyr's base health alone outscales a lot of people, right? And on top of that, if you, let's say you play a super aggressive crit Udyr with Gale Force and the Sense Reaver, so you have no health at all, it might still even be better to go Coup de Grace, to just get your execute damage to finish off the target instead of going Cut Down. Because the enemy is not gonna have as insane amount of health that it's gonna be worth it. Right? The more health the enemy has over you, the better Cut Down is. Cut Down is really a rune made for AD carries to shred tanks. So for instance, you're playing Vayne or Kaisar and you know the enemy is picking Gragas, Cho'Gath, whatever the fuck, Kai'Santa, some tanky stuff. Right? So can you shred them better down. It's not gonna happen on Udyr. It's just not. So, D tier. Alright, that will do it for the precision tree. Now we got domination coming up. First off, we have Electrocute. Electrocute is actually a rune I really like to play on full AP Udyr, on the old Udyr. The simple reason being Udyr, like old AP Udyr had a lot of burst, and Electrocute was really easy to trigger. The way Electrocute works is that you need to land 3 damages on the enemy from different damage sources. And when I played full AP Phoenix Udyr, you know, I run up to the enemy, I slap him with the bear stance to stun him, and then I follow up with a Phoenix slap. And the enemy got damage through bear stance, then the Phoenix flame damage, and the auto attack damage of the Phoenix. So that's 3 damage sources, although I only did 2 auto attacks. So like with this 2 auto attack combo, I always proc my Electrocute. Really nice for quick easy burst in and out gameplay. Amazing. The new Udyr actually can trigger Electrocute just as fast as the old Udyr, because it's similar. You run up with the ram stance, you stun him, you activate your Phoenix, you slap him, the enemy gets damaged through the auto attack and through the Phoenix. So instant Electrocute proc. That being said, if you don't actually build burst items on the AP Udyr, like Night Harvester for instance, something like that, but instead like go overtime damage like Demonic Embrace, Electrocute is not gonna have that same slap effect like it used to have. The general consensus with new AP Udyr is that overtime damage, because of how his new Phoenix works, is better than burst damage. If you have the right items, like I said, like Night Harvester and Lichbane, you can make it work, but it's not as great as it used to be. I think I put it in B tier. It used to be better. It's definitely playable. It's mid, right? It's mid. It's right down in the middle. It's not bad. It's not good either. If you want to play a full AP burst Udyr, go ahead and pick it. It's not bad. Alright, next up we got Predator. Predator is definitely an interesting rune on Udyr because it gives movement speed. Movement speed is always fun on Udyr. Especially considering that Udyr is one of the champions in the jungle, one of the rare champions in the jungle, that rushes boots. A lot of junglers don't have the need to do that. They rather rush their mythic item to be able to stat check harder. And they don't need the mobility. Like Jarvan, for instance, uses his EQ to get close, to gank, and actually to move through his jungle as well. Kayn has his Q and E. He doesn't need boots either. A lot of junglers don't need boots. Udyr does need them. And if you have Predator on top of that, you can get a little bit of damage upgrade and even more movement speed. It's gonna make early ganking a lot more fun, because it's gonna feel like you have 2 summoner spells for ganking instead of just 1. Usually you have your Ghost or your Flash. With Predator, it's just like another Ghost on top of that. If you compare the stats of Predator to Ghost, it's a close race. Predator is almost as good as Ghost. So it's gonna make early ganking a lot more fun. That being said, there's one downside to it, of course. You have a lot of movement speed running up, and then a little bit of burst damage hitting the enemy. But after that, it's done. It's done. You're out of juice. You have no more damage after that through your rune. No more mobility, no more utility, nothing. So after you have engaged the enemy, you better hope that the rest of your items provide the juice you need or your allies follow up on it. Because after Predator has done its job, it kind of leaves you hanging, right? That being said, fun angle, and I definitely say overall I enjoy it more than Electrocute. Can't put it S tier, but let's put it A tier. Alright, next up we got Dark Harvest. Dark Harvest definitely a huge fun angle. Stacking is always fun. You know, I remember I used to have games with my friends where we just picked 3 completely different champions and we all went Dark Harvest and we just had a race against each other who could get the most Dark Harvest stacks towards the end of the game, right? So it's definitely a fun angle. And it has the potential to completely outscale Electrocute. You need a lot of Dark Harvest stacks, I think about 15, 20 Dark Harvest stacks to actually outscale Electrocute, but you can get there. And the good thing about it is, after it triggers, you know, it might be on cooldown, but if you get a kill or an assist, the cooldown resets. So potentially, you can trigger this rune 5 times in teamfight, stacking the rune 5 times and dealing damage with it 5 times. So if you play your cards right, the value is insane. So you got value, you got fun. What's missing? The meta aspect. It's not super strong. It's not super strong. If you were looking for a meta burst rune on Udyr, Electrocute might actually be better than Dark Harvest, because if you don't get your stacks on Dark Harvest, Electrocute is going to be better damage-wise. And like I said, it's really easy to proc on Udyr. So I'd say it caps out at around the same level as Electrocute. Meta-wise, Electrocute is better. Fun angle-wise, Dark Harvest is cooler. But they cap out at around the same spot. I'd say a B tier. Alright, last in the Keystone Domination runes we have Hail of Blades. Hail of Blades actually has some history with meta Udyr. Some of you might remember the absolute terror and nightmare that used to be Prowler's Claw Udyr, and he went Hail of Blades. Simple reason of that was so you can get your one-shot combo out quicker and allow the enemy less chance for counterplay. You dashed in with Prowler's Claw, you hit them with your Ram Stance, that was the first Hail of Blades hit, right? And then you follow up with 2 Bear Slaps. Do a real quick 3-hit combo, and the enemy's done though, and you just get out. Now, of course, Prowler's Claw is the thing anymore, so Hail of Blades is seeing a lot of less play. That being said, I think you can still pull off the same thing with Ghostblade, just the positioning is a lot harder. Ghostblade gives you out of combat movement speed and an active with movement speed, so you can gap close to the enemy. It's not a dash like Prowler's Claw, but it does give you the bonus mobility to be able to catch the enemy, get your Hail of Blades combo on him, and you know, one-shot. So I say it still has a place in the meta if you enjoy like a full one-shot AD or lethality Udyr. But outside of that, not really. Udyr is looking more for consistent juice. Me personally, I didn't enjoy Hail of Blades as much as most people did. When I played Prowler's Claw Udyr, I actually sometimes went Face Rush instead, because I was like, well, my Q already gives me bonus attack speed. Do I really need Hail of Blades? I'd rather have Face Rush movement speed to be able to run away faster after I did my combo, or follow up onto the enemy. So for me personally, it doesn't do that much. Yeah, I'd say it's a C tier. Alright, next up we got Cheap Shot, Taste of Blood, and Sudden Impact. all pretty decent runes on Udyr. Now, before you hit me with the actually, you know, push up your glasses and try to correct me, Udyr can't trigger sudden impact because he doesn't have a dash. The E lunge Udyr has when he stuns an enemy actually counts towards activating sudden impact. So, yeah. Udyr can trigger sudden impact every time he stuns somebody with his E, which is perfect because that is exactly the moment he wants to apply his damage, right after his E. He can also trigger Prowler's Claw, just FYI, with his E. So, sudden impact is definitely interesting for lethality Udyr or for an Udyr just looking to do more damage. But damage-wise, I think it's closely followed by Cheap Shot. Cheap Shot only has a 4-second cooldown and applies true damage onto the enemy every time they are damaged by an ability while they are slowed or stunned. Udyr, having a stun on his E and a slow on his Phoenix, can trigger Cheap Shot like crazy. If you hit the enemy with Phoenix into an awakened Phoenix, you can trigger Cheap Shot at least 2 times. If you follow it, if you start the combo with a Ram's Dance, you can even trigger Cheap Shot 3 times in a single trade. Like, the value of Cheap Shot is insane. So if you're looking for straight up damage, I'd say Cheap Shot is better than Sudden Impact if you play Phoenix Udyr. If you want to play Lethality Udyr, you're probably better off going Sudden Impact. Now, where does this leave Taste of Blood? I personally enjoy Taste of Blood as a sustain rune, just to make trading easier. But what turns me off of Taste of Blood is the long cooldown it has. The problem with Taste of Blood is that the healing is not balanced around being ranged champion or melee champion. Taste of Blood doesn't heal melee champions more than it does ranged champions, so most of the time this rune is just abused by ranged champions who want more lane sustain. So it has a really long cooldown to balance that out. So if I have the choice of either triggering Cheap Shot's damage like 3 to 4 times onto the enemy or triggering Taste of Blood 1 time on myself, it's probably worth to go Cheap Shot instead. I'd rather do more damage to the enemy here than healing myself. Now, if you play a full sustain Udyr on the top lane and you're doing something funky, Taste of Blood can still be fun. But unless Riot balances this item around melee and ranged champions, I think it's never gonna do justice for the Udyr, especially compared to its direct competitors here. So, like I said, Cheap Shot can be triggered like crazy on Udyr. I think Udyr is one of the champions who gets the most value out of this item, out of all of them. So that's an easy S tier for me. I love Cheap Shot. I spam it like crazy. Taste of Blood is fun, but meta-wise, made for ranged champions, and it's gonna be a C tier for me. And Sudden Impact can surprisingly be triggered every time you hit your E on an enemy, so it's definitely viable for Lethality Udyr. I would put that in an A tier. Alright, next up we got Zombie Ward, Ghost Poro, and Eyeball Collection. Most of the time, if I have a domination tree Udyr, I go with Eyeball Collection, because Udyr is really good at getting kills early, getting the kills going, starting to snowball, and Eyeball Collection is actually helping to stack itself, because every time you get a kill, Eyeball Collection gives you more damage. If you have more damage, it's easier to kill, so the more Eyeball Collection stacks you have, the more you're gonna get. So I really enjoy Eyeball Collection. That being said, getting kills is probably the hardest challenge out of the 3 we have here. The Ghost Poro is pretty much setting a ward, the ward running out, and then spawning a Ghost Poro. When the ward runs out and spawns a Ghost Poro, it gives you 1 stack. If the Ghost Poro then spots an enemy, it gives you another stack. So it's super easy to stack unless the enemy finds your ward. So if you find good places to set your wards or you protect your wards well, Ghost Poro is going to reward you for that. Now Udyr in the jungle obviously usually doesn't play wards. It's good for top lane Udyr to have vision control. So if you're playing top lane Udyr and you have domination 3-second, you can consider going Ghost Poro. Because you're gonna run out of wards on top lane unless you buy pink wards. So it's actually giving you a lot of vision control and you can get bonus stats out of it. But in the jungle Udyr, unplayable. Same goes for zombie ward, because for zombie ward you have to clear wards. Most of the time when you gank a lane and you activate your red trinket, you will deactivate the wards that you run over. So the enemy is going to lose sight of you for a second, maybe not realize they're being ganked. You run onto the lane, you gank him, you kill him, right? By the time you reach the enemy, attacked him, killed him, whatever, your red trinket is long gone, right? It's not active anymore. So you can't go back and clear that ward. You can't get the zombie ward stacks going because you actually need to clear wards to get zombie ward stacks. Zombie ward is a rune that is made for supports, because supports go around, clear wards, and by clearing wards they can actually spawn wards themselves, so it's really good for vision control. Now you could say, maybe I use red trinket, try to gank a lane, I see the enemy is backing off already, and I just decide to take the ward instead of ganking the lane. That's a little bit of an L attitude though. I think you should go for the gank, regardless. You miss every shot you don't take. Don't take the L route and go zombie ward. No. So, in my opinion, zombie ward is just not made for the Udyr. I would put that in a D tier. Ghost Poro, like I said, can give you a lot of vision control on the top lane, and it's the easiest to stack. So if you play Domination Tree Udyr on the top or mid lane, it's not terrible. It's kind of cute too. So I'll put that A tier. But Eyeball Collection has to be S tier. Just Snowball Udyr is peak Udyr for me. It's that simple. Snowball Udyr is peak Udyr. If you get your kills early, you ramp up that damage, the items, and you just run down the enemy, that's the best. Eyeball Collection has to be up there. Alright, next up we got the 4 Hunter runes. Now this tier list is a little bit older, so it still has Relentless Hunter in here, which would, in my opinion, be an easy S tier. But of course, nowadays we have Treasure Hunter. So we're gonna just treat Relentless Hunter over here as Treasure Hunter, and this of course being Ingenious Hunter, Relentless Hunter, and Ultimate Hunter. Right off the bat, Udyr doesn't have an ultimate. He cannot trigger Ultimate Hunter. If you pick Ultimate Hunter and you go into a game, Riot will literally switch it out to Relentless Hunter. So you actually have a rune you can use. It's the only rune Udyr can make 0 use out of, because he literally doesn't have an ultimate. Really sad, but that's an instant D tier. It would be nice if it could actually reduce the Awaken cooldown, but that would make it way too cracked. Alright, so the discussion really is about Treasure Hunter, Ingenious Hunter, and Relentless Hunter. Well, I said I really enjoy snowballing on Udyr, so you would think I'd enjoy Treasure Hunter, because it gives more gold and it helps you snowball. I actually play Treasure Hunter on Master Yi, because Master Yi has really expensive items and not always the best build paths to these items. You know, he really wants to finish his big items and get his big power spikes. Udyr isn't like that. He snowballs, but he doesn't need these big item spikes. It's alright if you just build a part of an item and run out of base with Udyr. He gets progressively stronger, but he doesn't need like the big power spikes, you know? It's not that important on him. There's also an argument about Treasure Hunter having instant value but no long-term value, Once you have killed every enemy team member and you've gotten all the treasure hunter stacks, it doesn't give you anything after that. Once it has given its gold, it's a dead rune. It doesn't give anything anymore. Relentless Hunter will always give you movement speed after the rune is stacked. Ingenious Hunter will always give you item haste after it's stacked. That's never gonna stop, right? So that is kind of sad for Treasure Hunter. So I'm actually have to put it C tier. If you play a really aggressive Udyr, you can make it work, but it's not really my cup of tea. You know? Ingenious Hunter, however, is a super fun rune. I love active or passive items on Udyr that activate themselves when you do certain things. I've played Ingenious Hunter, for instance, on Khajiit Merchant Udyr, where I went Eclipse and Fimbulwinter. Eclipse and Fimbulwinter both have an 8-second cooldown on their shields, I think. And if you have fully stacked item haste, they have a 5-second cooldown. So instead of every 8 seconds, you get their shields every 5 seconds. So you get to trigger them more often during the team fights, which is super fun. And lately, I've been playing a lot of Udyr with Crown of the Shattered Queen and Banshee's Veil. Both of these items have a 40-second cooldown, and more important than that, this 40-second cooldown resets every time the enemy damages you. So, to give the enemy less of a chance to deactivate your items, and to actually set this huge cooldown of 40 seconds a bit lower, fully stacked Ingenious Hunter takes 13 seconds off of that. So you have these items up every 27 seconds instead of 40. That's a huge difference. And I can actually feel the impact of this rune. So just for the fun angle, and actually for like a meta angle for the builds I did, I'd give Ingenious Hunter an S tier. Relentless Hunter is kind of a double-edged sword, you know. Movement speed is always fun on the Udyr. I'm gonna say that a lot more, you know. I've been saying that a million times, and I'm gonna say it a million more times. Movement speed is fun on the deer. That being said, this rune is only out of combat movement speed, so you can run faster through your jungle, you get quicker to your gank locations, but as soon as the enemy pokes you, that movement speed is gone. So you better, you know, pack your best sidesteps and hope that the enemy, you know, doesn't just point and click you to kill your juice. It depends on the enemy's awareness how good this rune is. If somebody runs away from Thresh and this Thresh builds mobility boots, you are gonna realize this guy is crazy fast. He's probably having mobility boots. You just throw an ability back and then you keep running, because it's actually worth standing still to deactivate his mobi boots and then keep running. Same goes for Relentless Hunter. People are gonna be a lot less aware of Relentless Hunter than mobility boots because they can't press tab and see it, right? They don't know you have it, but they might get wise to the fact. So it's risky. When it works, but the enemy is aware of it, deactivates it, you get 0 value out of it. I want to put it A tier, but if I'm being honest to myself, I don't pick it often enough. I almost always go Ingenious Hunter if I go the domination tree. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this B tier. I have played Relentless Hunter on a few full AP Udyr builds, because on very aggressive Udyr builds, it's important to gap close to the enemy. And it's worth taking this risk then. Because if the enemy hits you before you gap close to him with a full damage build, you might as well take the risk, right? You're fucked then anyway if the enemy already hits you before you gap close to him. So Relentless Hunter is good for full damage builds. But if I have like 1 to 2 active items in my builds, I'm always considering Ingenious Hunter over it. Alright, that will do it for the domination tree. Next up, we got the sorcery tree. First off, we have Aery, or Summon Aery, if you want to be a stickler to the names here. Summon Aery is made to be a support rune, because it jumps to your allies when you heal and shield them to apply a bonus shield but it can also jump the enemy when you poke them. So it's really good for champions like Karma, for instance. You have a shield that you can give your allies, and Aery is going to react to that. But Karma also likes to poke the enemy with a Coup during the lane phase, and you get some bonus damage on that. So you get a little bonus here, a little bonus there, you know. Great, fun. But what about Udyr? You know, we're here for Udyr. Udyr obviously doesn't have a heal or shield that he can give his ally, so he can't trigger that part of the rune. That being said, Aery has a really interesting interaction considering her cooldown. The cooldown of Aery isn't based on time, but travel time. When you activate Aery, it jumps to the enemy, then it lingers onto the enemy for 2 seconds after it damaged it, and then it starts traveling back to you. And the rune is up as soon as it reaches you again, as soon as you reunite with Aery. Once she reaches you, she can jump the enemy again. Now obviously, the enchanter supports who are using Aery, like Lulu and Karma, like they're staying on their max range, poking the enemy, and they're gonna have to wait a long time until Aery comes back to them. Udyr, you know, is right in the enemy's face. So if he slaps the enemy, damages them, Aery jumps them, after 2 seconds it's gonna travel back to you, you're still right in front of the enemy. Aery reunites with you and you can instantly trigger it again. So Aery is pretty much a little damage boost that triggers every 2 seconds. That being said, Aery's scalings are not that great. It's a fun rune. It's definitely fun. It's cute. The idea is nice, but the meta angle is not really there. There's also some fun item interactions with Aery, but I'm gonna keep that under wraps until I do a video about that. I'm gonna do a little bit of a controversial here again and put Aery in A tier. I think if you're really good on Udyr and you're bored, you can have fun playing Aery. Because it's a little bit of a challenge, it's a fun interaction, just spamming Aery onto an enemy while you are in their face. You know, it just jumps the enemy like a fucking rabbit chihuahua. It's fun, it's fun. What can I say? Alright, next up we got Arcane Comet. Arcane Comet is really similar to Aery, but instead of also shielding the allies, it goes all into the damage spec. It has better scalings, it has better base damage, and every time you poke the enemy, you know, just like Aery, it flies onto the enemy, hurting them. Again, we can say something positive about travel distance here. Because when poking enemies hit an enemy, the Arcane Comet has to fly from your location to the enemy location. This travel distance actually gives the enemy a chance to counterplay. If you play Arcane Comet on Udyr and you're really close to the enemy, of course, when you attack them, the travel distance is tiny, which leaves almost no counterplay to the enemy to dodge the Arcane Comet damage unless they invest a dash to dodge it, which most of the time they're not gonna do. There's also really funky interaction I have found with Arcane Comet on Udyr. Yes, I've been playing Arcane Comet on Udyr, sue me, okay? The cooldown of the item resets by 20% every time you deal single target spell damage, 10% with AoEs, I think, and 5% with dot damage. Now, the Phoenix Udyr damage counts as AoE. Now, you might think to yourself, okay, wow, I get 10% damage reduction when I hit the enemy with my Phoenix. Whoop-de-doo, that doesn't make the rune good, right? But the Phoenix damage doesn't only just trigger once, right? The AoE damage of Phoenix triggers every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds. So a total of 8 times. Meaning if you hit your entire Phoenix duration onto an enemy, you get 80% damage reduction on Arcane Comet. Meaning Udyr can spam Arcane Comet like crazy, similar to Aery being able to spam like crazy. So it's a fun interaction. It's definitely funky. Is it meta? No, of course not. Nobody's playing Arcane Comet on Udyr. But it's super fun, and it's definitely an interaction not a lot of people would have with Arcane Comet. Man, this tier list is gonna look scuffed towards the end, but I'm gonna put this up here with Aery. If I give Aery A, I gotta give Arcane Comet A. Alright, next up we got Phase Rush. Phase Rush is an absolute OG rune on Udyr. If you don't know what rune to pick with your item build or against the enemy team comp, Phase Rush always got your back. Movement speed is great on Udyr, but on top of that, it doesn't only give movement speed, it also gives slow resistance. So you can slap the enemy, you know, and have this in and out gameplay. You run in, slap him, activate Phoenix, slap him again, you get your Phase Rush speed. The enemy might now, after you have attacked them, try to stop you, but there's no stopping a Phase Rush Udyr. You are out of there. The amount of times I have escaped situations I should have 100% died in, but just activated Phase Rush and ran out of there is crazy. I think no other rune in the game has saved my life this often. Like, not even Triumph. Triumph is pretty much made to save your life, because it heals you after you've gotten a kill, and usually after you've gotten a kill, you're pretty low on health yourself, right? But I think Phase Rush did a better job on that. So, on top of that, if you go Phase Rush, the other sorcery runes you can pick, like Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, and Waterwalking, all feed into that movement speed fantasy. So you can have a full rune page of just movement speed. It's great, you know? Like I said, OG rune, you can never go wrong with Phase Rush. It's similar to Press the Attack. If you don't know what you're doing, just pick Phase Rush. It's great. It's never gonna disappoint you. Easy S tier rune. Now we have a 3-way bundle of Nullifying Orb, Manaflow Band, and Nimbus Cloak. Right off the bat, we have to address Nullifying Orb here. Nobody is going Nullifying Orb every game. Nullifying Orb is a counter rune that you pick against like AP burst champions or AP champions that have an execute. You know, they go for that all in. So for instance, against Vega or Fizz, you could go Nullifying Orb and catch them off guard. They try to dive you, but you whip out that magic damage shield out of nowhere, you know, get to counter them. It's definitely fun, but it doesn't see a lot of play. Even if it counters the enemy, most of the time you rather go Manaflow Band for the mana sustain, because Manaflow Band is actually cracked. When you hit your spell, it gives you 25 mana, so like a third of your spell roundabout is getting like refunded. And it also buffs your permanent mana, and on top of that, when it's fully stacked, you get a consistent mana regen that is stronger when you're low on mana. Manaflow Band is so goated, and like I said, when you play top lane or mid lane Udyr, it's a really mana hungry champion. Outside of the jungle, he does need a mana sustain rune or item. So you either go Doran's Ring, you go Presence of Mind, or you go Manaflow Band. You have to take one of these three, or you're gonna have mana problems. It's just that simple. It's a fact. Manaflow Band is great. I think before we continue the discussion between Nullifying Orb and Nimbus Cloak, we can just go ahead and put Manaflow Band in an S tier. If I play top lane Udyr, I almost always pick Manaflow Band with me. It's a great rune. Solid. Never disappoints. It's also really easy to trigger with a simple tick of your Phoenix aura. So, Nullifying Orb, like I said, it's situational. If you really want to fuck with your enemy, because they're in full AP champion and they're trying to all-in you, it can be fun, but I can't remember the last time I picked this rune. I wouldn't put it D tier, because it definitely has its place, you know, but it's a C tier. And Nimbus Cloak is definitely fun. Definitely fun. It's movement speed, of course, again, and it helps you get that bonus nitro boost on Udyr when you need it. Let's say you smite the enemy. Smite slows down the enemy, but what if that's not enough? You know, you get a little 5% bonus movement speed on top, courtesy of Nimbus Cloak. You activate Ghost, and on top of that you get Nimbus Cloak, so your Ghost has a little bit of extra boost. Or TP, you teleport onto your top lane because your enemy is being greedy, pushing your turret. He now tries to disengage, and usually he would get away, but because you get bonus movement speed from Nimbus Cloak right after your TP, you're able to put on the chase, you know? If I don't go Manaflow Band, I always go Nimbus Cloak. And since I never go Manaflow Band in the jungle, because you don't need mana in the jungle, I pick Nimbus Cloak very, very often. It's a great rune. A tier. Why not S tier? For two reasons. First off, because Nimbus Cloak gives you movement speed bonus based on the cooldown of the spell. So the longer the spell's cooldown, the more movement speed you gain. Meaning, Smite gives you the lowest possible movement speed bonus. And I pick this rune in the jungle. So my Smite only gives me a 5% bonus. It's a nice little extra, but it's not necessary. If I pick Ghost on Udyr in the jungle, Nimbus Cloak has insane value. But if I go Flash, most of the time I'm using Flash to flash stun the enemy. And I use Flash Stun in a way that I'm already on top of the enemy after I flashed, so I don't necessarily need the bonus movement speed, right? I don't need it. It's great to like follow up and run ahead of the enemy after I stunned them then. Or, you know, escape with Flash if I flash away from the enemy and get a bonus movement speed after that. But, you know, I can't put it S tier. Like, it's a bit niche. Alright, next up we got Transcendence, Celerity, and Absolute Focus. Absolute Focus, right off the bat, is a rune that gives you more AP or AD if you are above 70% health. That is not gonna happen on Udyr. Before you even engage the enemy, they are gonna throw shit at you. You know, you're gonna lose health during the engage and right after the engage, and you're not gonna see a lot of value out of that. Absolute Focus is made for champions who can just chill in their max range and poke the enemy, you know, and get as much value out of this rune as possible before they are actually the target of the enemy and starting to lose health themselves. So right off the bat, Absolute Focus is absolute dog shit. Put it in the D tier. You know, let's not talk about it. So we got Transcendence and Celerity. Transcendence is a rune I often pick on Udyr if I know that my item build is gonna be lacking ability haste. Transcendence can give you a total of 10 ability haste when it's fully stacked. And on top of that, I think at level 11, it will give your abilities that are on cooldown a reset if you land a kill. This reset is useless on Udyr because you have almost all of your abilities constantly up and they have really low cooldown. But the 10 ability haste is actually pretty good. If I know my item build only has like 30 or 20 ability haste, I like to pick up Transcendence, you know, to round that number up. For instance, we did that on our Rod of Ages Udyr. We go Rod of Ages into Sarah's Embrace, and we only have 15 ability haste. For an AP Udyr, that's not really playable. So I went Transcendence to have 25, and all of a sudden it's way smoother, right? So it really helps to fill in the blanks. That being said, if you have enough ability haste, Transcendence in my opinion is overkill, and you should go for Celerity because movement speed on Udyr, especially bonus movement speed like that strengthens your other movement speed bonus, is really nice. Celerity, for me, you know, it used to be stronger, but it's still solid. You know, I would give this an S tier. Transcendence, however, although I pick it often, I'd say it's only good if you need it. It helps you when you are in need. If you already have enough ability haste, you're not gonna pick it though. I'm gonna put it B tier. I'm gonna put it B tier because it's not fun. You know, it's not fun. It helps you, but it's not fun, right? It's not meta. You only pick it when you need to. I don't think it deserves A tier when I look at the other A tier runes. It's still good, I like it, but I only pick it when I need it. Alright, next up we got the 3-way bundle of Scorch, Waterwalking, and Gathering Storm. I like all of these runes on Udyr. Scorch is really nice to get some bonus damage on your trades if you're playing top lane Udyr. Especially if you consider that the other runes you can pick here are Waterwalking and Gathering Storm. You're not gonna get value out of Waterwalking on top lane Udyr, and you're not really gonna get early value at least out of Gathering Storm. Udyr's AP scaling on W is okay-ish, and it's pretty good on Phoenix, so you can get value out of Gathering Storm in the late game. But if you're looking to dominate in the lane phase and you have the sorcery tree, Scorch is the way to go. Just put a little bit of bonus damage on top of your trades, you know. It's a fun rune, definitely. Only a 10-second cooldown, so every trade you do, you get this little Scorch damage on top. That being said, though, you know, we're not just talking about top lane Udyr, we're talking about mid lane Udyr, we're talking about jungle Udyr. And on jungle Udyr, Waterwalking is cracked. In my opinion, Waterwalking is unbalanced downright. You have to consider, you get not just bonus movement speed, like as a percentage, you get flat 25 bonus movement speed. That is like getting boots for free. You are gonna zoom through the river. I would pick Waterwalking if it would just be the movement speed, but on top of that, you also get adaptive damage, attack damage or ability power. Right? So while you're in the river and you have Waterwalking, nobody can fuck with you. So Waterwalking gives you really good dragon control and baron control. You have better control over objectives because you can move faster through the river, and if you take a fight in the river, you're gonna have improved stats. Waterwalking to me is an easy S tier. Scorch, like I said, it's nice to have this bonus damage on the top lane, you know, as like with every trade you have a little bit of burn on the enemy. That being said though, you would have to have sorcery as your first rune page and not as your secondary rune page to consider going Scorch. If you have sorcery as your secondary tree on the top lane, most of the time you're gonna do Manaflow Band and Transcendence, or Manaflow Band and Nimbus Cloak. If you go Phase Rush, so you have sorcery as your primary tree, then you have the space open for Scorch. Then you could do Scorch. It's better than what I'm looking at here in the C tier, and it's fun. So let's give it B tier. And last off, we got Gathering Storm. Like I said, Udyr has decent AP scaling on W and really good scaling on Phoenix. But you have to consider the fact that Udyr is a champion that likes to get ahead early and snowball. If you are going for fun angle and you're saying, I want to scale super hard into the late game, I want to go Rod of Ages, I want to have insane amount of ability power, you can go Gathering Storm. It's fine. You know, the competition against Gathering Storm is not too harsh, you know. If you're going top lane Udyr, you don't even have to consider Waterwalking. So, you know, it's either Scorch or Gathering Storm. So Gathering Storm is going to win most of the time. But the meta aspect, although I think Gathering Storm is better than Scorch, from a meta perspective, Scorch is probably better. Yeah. Oh man, rough. But I think I'm gonna have to put it in the same tier here. It's both B tier. Alright, that will do it for the sorcery tree. And next up, we got Resolve. Grasp of the Undying is definitely one of the most fun runes this entire tier list has to offer. Stacking is fun. Stacking is just fun, you know? And if you're saying stacking is not fun, you're lying, and you can see yourself out, okay? Because this shit's fun. Grasp of the Undying gives you max health whenever you stack it, and also applies a bit of bonus damage onto the enemy. Now this max health is gonna be useful regardless what champion you play. You have now a stat added to your health bar, and it's gonna make the game a little bit easier for you. But most of the champions who play Grasp of the Undying play it either for the poke or because they have an ability that scales with health. And Udyr does have that. Udyr's W not only scales with 50% of his AP, but also with a percentage of his health. So the more health you collect with Grasp of the Undying, the bigger your turtle shields are gonna be. So if you ever wanted to play a turtle deer on the top lane, Grasp of the Undying is definitely the rune to go. There's a lot of champions who like to pick Grasp of the Undying because they poke with it. So for instance Fiora. Fiora just hits minions until Grasp of the Undying is up, then she waits for the enemy to approach, and then she pokes him with the Q and instantly goes out. She got her Grasp of the Undying poke on him, and then she goes back to farming, right? Udyr can do something similar here, because Udyr has bonus range on his auto attacks when he uses his Q and his E, and also he has a slow on his Phoenix, which helps him to gap close to the enemy to apply his auto attacks and apply Grasp of the Undying. So he has a really easy time to stack Grasp of the Undying against melee top laners. Most of the enemies won't see this bonus range on his Q coming, so this is a really good way to stack your Grasp of the Undying sneakily. Yeah, great rune, it's fun and it's strong. There's nothing I could have to complain against this rune. This is an easy S tier. Alright, next up we got Aftershock. I don't see anyone playing Aftershock on Udyr, and I can only explain that fact to myself through it not having consistent value. It has value at the start of the teamfight and then it falls off. Most Udyr runes that are played consistently have effects that give him stats throughout the entire teamfight. Aftershock helps you at the start and then it falls off. That being said, Udyr has a really easy time triggering and applying the damage of Aftershock. Aftershock triggers once you stun or hard CC the enemy in any other way. It then gives you bonus resistances, and after a few seconds it will explode, dealing damage to nearby enemies based on your health. Now, Udyr, of course, will trigger this rune by stunning people with his ram stance. He's right on top of the enemy after doing that, and he will follow up with a Phoenix. So now, Udyr has the Aftershock ticking, and the enemy is slowed by the Phoenix. So they can't get away from the Aftershock aura, and they will have to eat that Aftershock damage. So I think this has great value on Udyr, and it's definitely a fun rune. Now, if you're looking to play a full tank Udyr for the fun of it, Aftershock is great. I think Aftershock is fucking great. And even if you play an Udyr build that doesn't have a lot of resistances to play on this power fantasy, you know, Aftershock can help you to have the resistances you need. So for instance, I lately tried an Udyr build where I played 2 items that give me health, but I had no resistances. I had 2 items giving me health, but no resistances. So I was like, how do I fix this issue? You know, I'm not tanky enough, but I really want these 2 items. So I built Aftershock, and now, for at least the start of the team fight, I have health, I have resistances, and I have the 2 items I wanted. You know, for these few seconds while Aftershock was active, the world was okay. You know? It's definitely a fun rune. You see the impact of it, you know, visually speaking, and the damage it deals. I'ma have to put it A tier. I think this rune doesn't see enough play, and people should give it a chance. I think it's more fun than some of the runes I put in B tier. It's definitely a close range now that I look at it. It's a close race. But yeah, I think it deserves that. I think it deserves that. If you haven't played Aftershock Udyr yet, give it a chance. I think you're gonna have a much better experience than you would anticipate. Alright, and next up we got Guardian. Guardian is a rune made for supporters that peel for their AD carries. So for instance, we got Rakan and Braum. This rune triggers when damage is dealt to you or your AD carry while you're standing really close to that AD carry. So Braum jumps to his AD carry, Rakan jumps to their AD carry. The enemy tries to all-in you, but they're gonna have to go through these shields first. You can play Udyr in a peeling playstyle, and you can trigger Guardian on him. It's gonna have some value on him. It's definitely gonna have some value on him. You get movement speed, you get shields, combines well with the turtle. But there's one big downside to it. Udyr is more of a chaser than a peeler. In a team fight, more often you're gonna find yourself stunning the enemy and then staying on top of the enemy, slowing them and attacking them, putting pressure on them, you know, and your allies can then follow up and attack the enemy while they are busy with you. Rarely you will find yourself running away from the enemy and to your allies to help your allies instead, because your job is chasing down the enemy, right? If you like supporting Udyr, and that's your playstyle, and you just want to stay on top of your hyper carry and protect them at all costs, you know, Guardian is fun. Guardian is really, really fun. But the way you usually play Udyr, you're not gonna trigger this rune as often as you should. I think if you would play like a supporting Udyr, if you would like look at the stats, see how often Rakan and Braum trigger Guardian during a game and how often you triggered it on your supporting Udyr, you're gonna probably get outscaled every single time. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put it C tier. I don't think I can comfortably put it in B tier. Nope, can't speak for it, sorry. Next up, we got Demolish, Font of Life, and Shield Bash. I have to address something right off the bat. Last tier list I did about the mythic items, I talked about how great Font of Life is because it can trigger support item effects. That is only half true now. Riot has released a patch where Font of Life doesn't trigger Echoes of Helia anymore, which makes Echoes of Helia now unplayable on Udyr, and that definitely takes away from Font of Life. That being said, Font of Life can still trigger Staff of Flowing Water and Ardent Censer. So if you want to play supporting Udyr, Font of Life is still a rune I would pick up every now and then to do with that. That being said, the rune itself has basically zero value. The healing this rune provides is 5 plus 1% of your max health over 2 seconds. Let me put that in some numbers for you. So let's say you have 3000 health on Udyr. 1% of that is 30. Plus 5 is 35. So over 2 seconds, your allies get to heal 35 health if they trigger Font of Life when you have 3000 health. That's nothing. Font of Life itself has zero value, no purpose. It should itself right now, okay? Like, the rune is bad. The only value Font of Life has is through, you know, triggering support items. That is the existence this item has. It will trigger Ardent Censer, it will trigger Staff of Flowing Water, and it should be triggering Shurelias and Echoes of Helia, but Riot removed that interaction. So, you know, it has nothing left. So you might ask yourself now, so why are people even playing Font of Life, you know, if it's so bad? Well, the thing is, Font of Life has to compete with Shield Bash and Demolish. Right off the bat, Shield Bash can only be used by champions who also have a shield. So all champions that don't have a shield only have to choose between Demolish and Font of Life. And a lot of champions that are not good at pushing turrets and are rather busy, zoning the enemy, clearing waves, establishing vision control somewhere else, they're not going to go Demolish. So they only have Font of Life left. Right, looks at this stat and thinks to themselves, well, there's people who play Font of Life, surely we don't have to buff it. So, the rune has such insane potential, and I think that is what saves it from me putting it in D tier. It's gonna be a C tier. Sorry, not sorry. Demolish, in my opinion, is a great rune. You should always pick on top lane Udyr if you're going for a split push angle. If you're playing split push Udyr top lane, you have to pick this rune. The value of this item is insane. Not only does it help you get platings during the lane phase and therefore snowballing, but even after the lane phase, it will have you split push. It will help you split pushing, because you can get your damage on turrets faster, kill the turrets faster, and then get out faster before the enemy has time to react. The turret is gone before they have time to collapse on you, and you're gone before they're there. Great rune, super fun. You feel the impact of it. That's an easy S tier. That being said, the last competitor here, Shield Bash, is nothing to scoff at either. The fun thing about Shield Bash is that it doesn't have a cooldown. Shield Bash effect activates every time you apply a new shield. So let's say the enemy attacks you and you activate Turtle. You will get the bonus resistance from Shield Bash and the bonus damage on your next auto attack from Shield Bash. You then hit the enemy and then you activate Turtle again to use your Awakened Turtle. You apply another shield and the effect activates again. You will refresh the duration of your resistances, and you will get another Shield Bash auto attack. So as long as you have shields, you can spam Shield Bash auto attacks. The rune doesn't only make you tankier, it also helps you with damage output. And that is the entire power fantasy Khajiit Merchant was based on. So I went Eclipse and Fimbulwinter for 2 shield items, and on top of that I had my turtle shields. And it just triggers over and over again because it doesn't have cooldown. So the potential of this item is limitless, and if you play around it right, it's great, And the sound effect of it every time you hit it, pure dopamine. Although I put a competitor of this rune, Demolish, in S tier, I'm gonna have to put this in S tier as well. Great rune, fantastic. It's definitely one of my absolute favorites. Alright, next up we got Conditioning, Second Wind, and Bone Plating. That is a choice you will have to make almost every game. On Jungle Udyr, it's simple. You always go Conditioning. You don't get any Second Wind value in the jungle because there's no champion poking you, And Bone Plating might be useful if you're looking for skirmishes and fights, but most of the time Conditioning is the best rune in the jungle because it activates after a certain amount of time, but in the jungle you are safe. You can wait out that time, In the top lane it's greedy to go Conditioning because you will have to deal with having less sustain. But in the jungle it's always Conditioning. It has great synergy with Jaksho because of the bonus resistances. And it's always going to be a top choice on the deer. Before I can even continue this discussion here with the other runes, I'm gonna have to put Conditioning in the S tier. Second Wind and Bone Plating, however, is similar to Last Stand and Coup de Grace. One of them has consistent value, the other one has high risk, high reward value. Second Wind is gonna heal you every time you get damaged. Second Wind is gonna heal you. This is especially good against laners like Darius and Teemo, because every time the overtime damage ticks on you, Second Wind gets refreshed and it heals you. So their overtime damage gets countered by your overtime heal that keeps refreshing. So it's definitely nice, consistent healing. That being said, bone plating reduces 30 to 60 damage based on level per bone plating from the damage you take by enemies. So you have 3 bone platings right at the start of the game, each reducing 30 damage of the enemy. So let's say you wait in a bush on the top lane and you're waiting for your top laner to arrive. It's Riven. Riven is gonna spam her spells and attacks like crazy. She is gonna proc all 3 bone platings on you. She arrives into lane, she takes the fight with you. You know, she's just spamming her abilities and all of your bone platings get procced. 30, 60, 90 damage, gone. Gone, just gone. Second Wind is never gonna heal you 90 health in a single fight. From level 1, bone plating will outscale Second Wind, but that's only if bone plating gets triggered all 3 times. If the enemy is smart and he knows you have bone plating, which he will see once he triggers it the first time, you know, he will try to poke you to trigger your first bone plating, then disengage, wait for your bone plating to be down, and then take the real trade, you know. And bone plating having a 60-second cooldown definitely gives the enemy a window to put some damage on you while it's down. So Second Wind is a safe option, always giving you the minimum amount of health you need to be able to sustain. Bone plating can have really high value if you play around it right. Most of the time I go Second Wind because enemies know how to play around bone plating. It has been around for a while. It has a visual and audio cue. No, Second Wind is nice. And I like that it counters Teemo and Darius, which Udyr has a rough time on in the top lane, so I'm going to put this A tier. Bone plating, if you play it right, it's better than Second Wind. But I personally don't pick it often enough to be able to say, go ahead and pick it, you know, because I myself don't do it. So I'm going to put this B tier. Alright, and last in the resolve tree, we got Overgrowth, Revitalize, and Unflinching. Overgrowth, similar to Grasp of the Undying, is a really nice fun angle, because you get to stack a lot of health. And on top of that, your turtle scales with health, so you're gonna have bonus value from Overgrowth that not every champion has, you know. So Overgrowth, right off the bat, is really nice. That being said, it's a scaling rune and it's not gonna help you in any way during the lane phase. Revitalize has a 5% healing boost that's buffed to a 10% healing boost if you're low on health. This is really good for turtle. You know, your shields get buffed, your heals get buffed. This is really gonna help you with your lane sustain. When I play top lane Udyr, I often go Revitalize instead of Shield Bash because it's more fun to me and it's the more solid option. Overgrowth is greedy. Similar to conditioning, Overgrowth is just greedy. It's a lot of late game value, and if you manage to survive the lane phase, it's gonna be better than most other runes. But if you go conditioning and Overgrowth and then you lose the lane phase, it's gonna hurt so much more. It's not always worth taking the risk. So in my opinion, Revitalize is definitely over Overgrowth, although Overgrowth is a fun rune and has nice synergy with Udyr. I think Revitalize is better. Now, when we throw Unflinching in the mix here, I think we can ignore Unflinching when it comes to top lane. In top lane, CC doesn't matter that much. Like, if you lane against a Gragas top lane and you have Unflinching, the amount of slows and knockbacks and stuns this champion has, Unflinching is not going to help you to get close to him. So even if you would say, well, there's certain champions who have a lot of CC, it's not worth it. Unflinching, in my opinion, is a jungler's rune. It helps you a lot in skirmishes, you know, and if you have to face multiple champions. But on top lane in the 1v1 situation, Unflinching is useless. That being said, I like Unflinching for a Tenacity rune much more than the actual Tenacity rune. because outside of just Tenacity, it also provides slow resistance, and slows are really painful for Udyr. So let's go ahead and rate those. I'd say, although Unflinching is useless on the top lane, it's really great in the jungle. I pick it really often, and I play more jungle Udyr than top lane at the end of the day, so Unflinching is an S tier for me. Revitalize is definitely fun, and also strong. It's not a meta rune, but it's an A tier for me. And Overgrowth I would put in a B tier. Alright, we are down to the last 3. We got the Inspiration. First rune we got here, Glacial Augment. Glacial Augment I used to fuck around with on old Udyr because it was pretty interesting, you know? The duration of the Frost Rays is based on your Hard to See plus its actual duration. So the Frost Rays Glacial Augment applies onto the enemy, stick around for 3 seconds plus your stun duration. So if I ran up to people and bear slapped them with old Udyr, they were 1 second stunned, had the Frost Ray under them, and after that a 3 second slow. That really helped lock down people and made Udyr a lot stickier. But now with the new Udyr, you already have a Frost Aura around you that slows enemies when you activate your Phoenix. So Glacial Augment kind of lost its purpose on Udyr. You already have a slow. So on old Udyr I would have rated it much higher. On new Udyr, it's lost its purpose. Yeah, it's damn near unplayable. I would put it in D tier, unironically. Glacial Augment doesn't have anything going for it if you're playing it on Udyr. If you play Q-Max Udyr, maybe you can play it, but even then. The 10% damage reduction that applies on the enemy only works for your allies, not for yourself, so you couldn't use it in a 1v1 situation, so in the end of the day, what's the point? Right, next up we got Unsealed Spellbook. I have to be honest here, I never touched this rune in my life. It's too complicated for me, man. Instead of this rune giving stats, it allows you to switch out your summoner spells during the game. So if one of your summoner spells is on cooldown, you could be just be like, fuck it, I can't wait for my ignite. Switch it out with Unsealed Spellbook and you get heal or barrier instead. But I think Udyr goes off harder on just getting stats. And there's champions who need summoner spells a lot more. For instance, Unsealed Spellbook is played often on Nessus. Nessus is really cracked with summoner spells because he lacks a lot of mobility. So you can go teleport flash on Nessus, but then use Unsealed Spellbook to use Ghost, you know? Or you can get Exhaust to slow down the enemy when your W is down. So on Nessus, for instance, it has value. But I can't see this item being played on Udyr. Maybe you could play it on Udyr top lane, go teleport and flash, and then use Unsealed Spellbook to get Ghost to run down enemies, or switch out TP with Ignite for 1v1 situations, catch the enemy off guard, right? But, you know, it takes a big brain to play around Unsealed Spellbook the right way. I'm gonna have to go ahead and put it in D tier, because I've never in my life picked this rune, and I don't see myself ever doing it. Alright, last off, we got what looks like to be Omnistone, but like I said, this tier list is a little bit older, so we're gonna treat this Omnistone like it's First Strike. Like, First Strike is the rune where you hit the enemy and you get a bonus damage boost on them, and for every bonus damage you deal onto the enemy, you get gold. Most of the time this rune is played on assassins, who have a quick engage, catch the enemy off guard, get a little bit of bonus on their burst damage, and cash out some extra gold to get their items faster. You know? Made for assassins, pretty much. That being said, I think Udyr in the jungle can make use of First Strike. when you gank an enemy on Udyr, the first thing that shoots through the enemy's head is the thought of, I have to get out of here. Most of the time, unless they have CC in their kit, they are not gonna bother standing still to throw back abilities at you. They're gonna run for their hills. They're gonna try to reach their turret. So most of the time, when you play jungle Udyr and you run down enemies, you will have a chance to trigger first strike onto them. And if you play Q-Max Udyr and you land an awakened Q on the enemy, you definitely have the burst to make use out of the effect that First Strike gives. So for instance, I've been playing First Strike on Gale Force Udyr. When I dash onto the enemy with Gale Force, I have a quick gap close like an assassin. I damage the enemy actually with the Gale Force missiles, activating First Strike, and then I hit him with the Awakened Q, to play around the burst, and get some bonus damage and get bonus gold out of it. I wouldn't say this rune is unplayable on Udyr. Unless you're trying to play it on the top lane or mid lane, you're probably gonna get poked every time the rune is up. But if you play it jungle, there's a chance you can play it. And there's also an argument to be made about Udyr wanting to have this the snowball angle, right? Udyr likes to snowball. Last but not least, it's definitely interesting. There's runes that will give you attack speed, they give you bonus damage, they give you bonus movement speed. But what rune can you name me that gives you bonus gold? Gold is a stat that is not often used because it's tough to balance, but Riot made a rune out of it regardless, and I think that's pretty cool. Just being able to get more gold than any other champion in the game by going this rune. You don't have to just farm and wait for the gold, you can actively get gold by hitting the enemy, fucking pickpocketing them. It's a fun rune. That being said, it's definitely no meta angle. You will never see a first strike meta with Udyr, mark my words. So it's definitely, I'd say, in the mid department. I can't put it higher than B tier, but I think it's fun, and it's worth something. Alright, next up we got Hextech Flash, Magical Footwear, and Stopwatch. None of these three runes are really great for Udyr. Udyr can't make a lot of use out of Hex Flash, unless you play him in the jungle, I'd say. If you play Udyr in the jungle with Flash and you have Hex Flash, you gank a lane, you used your Flash, now you have Hex Flash, you can use this Hex Flash to, let's say, get faster into Dragon Pit or get out of Dragon Pit after you've cleared the dragon and you need an escape. You can also use Hex Flash to jump over a wall in order to gank a lane. But it's definitely really niche scenarios, and this only works if you have already burned your real Flash. I don't think it's a great competitor. It won't do you a lot of good. Compared to Magical Footwear and Stopwatch, I don't think it can keep up. Magical Footwear is an interesting option on Udyr. Udyr likes to rush boots early to get his movement speed. But if you play Ghost on Udyr, you might be able to counteract that. And you might be able to wait out the 10 to 12 minutes until you finally get your Magical Footwear, and then you have more movement speed. And more movement speed is always great on Udyr. So you're gonna have a little bit of a shittier early game without your boots, but the 10 base movement speed is gonna be great for the mid to late game. This is definitely an interesting angle, and also you will save 300 gold, allowing you to build other items first. Stopwatch you also save a little bit of money on, but that's only if you actually build an item that is built out of Stopwatch. So for instance, Zhonya's or Guardian's Angel. Now there's gonna be some games where you might be building Zhonya's on Udyr, but probably never Guardian's Angel. He's just not the champion to do that. Yeah, Stopwatch itself has some value one time for one fight when you use its invulnerability effect, but after that it's gone. Out of these 3 runes, I think Magical Footwear is the best, but that's only if you are able to survive the early game without boots. None of these runes are really great for Udyr. I'll say try to avoid all 3 of them, but if you actually have to pick one of them, Magical Footwear is probably gonna be the best, and Hextech Flash is the worst. Stopwatch is a D tier, Hextech Flash is also D tier, and Magical Footwear, it's gonna be a C tier. None of them are great, bro. None of them are really great. Alright, next up we got the 3-way bundle of Futures Market, Minion Dematerializer, and Biscuit Delivery. Like I said with First Strike, it's interesting that Riot is choosing runes that actually can give you a gold advantage. So Futures Market, you being able to just cash in items sooner, but going into the miners is really an interesting angle. This is a rune you can play on Udyr if you're playing a super aggressive snowbally build. So for instance, like you want Trinity Force and Relentless Hydra, like these really big items that have a lot of value once you finish them, but not as much value when it's only the small parts of it. If you play the standard-ish bruiser or tanky-ish Udyr, especially on Phoenix Udyr, I wouldn't go Futures Market though. It's rarely worth it. Minion Dematerializer, however, is a really nice rune I have learned to appreciate ever since I started playing Phoenix Udyr on the top lane and just perma-farm and even proxy the enemy. Minion Dematerializer gives you bonus damage on the minions you have killed with it, and that makes your Phoenix wave clear just so much better. It's so much easier to now shove in the enemy waves, to proxy farm them and get out before it gets dicey, you know, and that just leaves you more room to hit the turret, you know, punish the enemy by shoving in waves, roaming around to help your jungler fight skirmishes in the river or play around the Herald. So if you want to play top lane Udyr and you're looking for more wave clear, don't always build Relentless Hydra, you know. Try Minion Dematerializer with Phoenix. You might be positively impressed by how great it works. Biscuit Delivery is a difficult topic. I've said that I really think Udyr on lanes needs a mana rune. So for instance, Manaflow Band or Presence of Mind. You could argue that the Biscuit Delivery is also a mana rune because it provides 40 mana right off the bat and also increases your maximum mana. But compared to Manaflow Band, right? Manaflow Band can activate 10 times with a really low cooldown, gives you 25 mana every time, and a total of 250 maximum mana. Biscuit Delivery only activates after 2, 5 and 6 minutes, only 3 times, and gives you 40 mana for a total of 120. No matter how you twist and turn that, it cannot keep up with Manaflow Band. The buff durations of this item is so sporadic and like spread out, you know? And even then, it's not much better than Manaflow Band at all. I never play Biscuit Delivery on Udyr. If I play top lane Udyr, it's almost always Minion Dematerializer. That being said, Biscuit Delivery is not completely useless if you're looking for some extra sustain, if you have a rough lane, somebody poking you like Jace or Gnar, you know, it's not completely without purpose. I'd say Biscuit Delivery is a B tier. Futures Market is also B tier, you know. Minion Dematerializer is definitely above that. I would actually put it S tier. I've really come to enjoy Minion Dematerializer. Try it out, the wave clear is actually pretty nuts. We got our last 3 runes here. Cosmic Insight, Approach Velocity, and Time Warp Tonic. Time Warp Tonic is a rune that doesn't see a lot of play anymore. There used to be actually a Time Warp Tonic meta during Season 12, because it used to give 5% movement speed every time you used a pot or a biscuit and during its duration you just had some nice bonus movement speed. Ever since then, Riot nerfed the movement speed from 5% to 4%, and then from 4% to 2%. So it now only gives 2% bonus movement speed whenever you use a potion or a biscuit. To put it in perspective for you, let's say you are Udyr without boots, meaning you have 350 movement speed. If you now take Time Warp Tonic, you have 357 movement speed. You get 7 bonus movement speed. That's not a lot. Like 2% is not a lot, no matter how you twist and turn it. So you're pretty much just only taking Time Warp Tonic now because it can consume 30% of your potion instantly, giving you like a small heal and an advantage in a 1v1 situation if you need a clutch heal. But I can see why this rune doesn't see a lot of play anymore, because its glory days are definitely over. I would really like to see Riot like buffing this movement speed to like back to 4%, maybe even 3.5%. Give me something here, because I can't rate this rune much higher otherwise. I'm gonna have to put Time Warp Tonic, I say, in a D tier. Every time I use this rune, I just get reminded of how great it used to be. It's rough. It's rough. Approachal Veloso and Cosmic Insight, however, are great runes on Udyr. If you go top lane Udyr, you should definitely consider Cosmic Insight, because Cosmic Insight not only gives you item haste, it gives you summoner spell haste, meaning it can reduce the cooldown of your summoner spells. And if you are like me and you play top lane Udyr with Teleport and Flash, you have 2 summoner spells with the longest cooldown in the game, meaning you get a lot of value out of Cosmic Insight. So that is definitely nice value. And if you have on top of that like active items or items with a cooldown when you're playing top lane Udyr, you get twice the value out of that. Not a bad rune. You have to pick the right summoner spells and items for this to work, but it can have high value if you play around it. So Cosmic Insight, I'd say it's situational, but it can definitely have its value. The thing is, because it's in direct competition to Approach Velocity, I can't put it S tier. So I'm gonna have to put it A tier. Approach Velocity, however, is an S tier for me, because the way it interacts with Phoenix. So Approach Velocity gives you a 7.5% bonus movement speed towards enemies that are movement impaired. This bonus is doubled to 15% movement speed, which is quite a lot for a simple rune, you know. While you impair the enemy's movement speed. So let's say you try to get close to the enemy, you activate Phoenix, then you run onto them with Ram Stance while Phoenix is still active. You now have a Phoenix ring around you that slows the enemy. You have Ram Stance movement speed, gap closing to the enemy. The Ram Stance movement speed falls off, but you get in range for your Phoenix Flame Ring. The enemy is now slowed, and Approach Velocity will give you another speed boost to actually get in close range for your Ram Stance. That's a beautiful synergy. And even if you don't do that combo, let's say you're just farming and the enemy gets a little bit too close. You pop that Phoenix, you know, you get 15% bonus movement speed, and you're gonna be easily able to apply your 2 Phoenix auto attacks before he can get away. He's slowed, your movement speed buffed, there's no getting away from that. Approach Velocity is a great rune on Udyr and it's definitely an S tier for me. I have been ranting about runes for close to 2 hours now, and I can really feel my voice losing, you might have realized. So I hope this will suffice for a rune tier list for you. I have enjoyed ranting about a tier list again, and I hope we can come up with more tier lists in the future. So now we have a mythic item tier list for Udyr, and we have a rune tier list for Udyr to put in perspective what can Udyr do with the stuff Riot puts in the game for him. So if you have another idea for a tier list, please let me know. If you enjoyed this one, why not hit the like button and maybe also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next list I do or another video, right? So thank you so much for watching and hope you had a chill time doing so, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.